So we've been thinking about like individuals and churches that move into neighborhoods and they want to see what the reign of God looks like. They want to get involved, and they have this tendency to kind of sometimes get it quite wrong, don't they? Like I remember you telling me that story about like the neighborhood development Seder thing. What was that?
Yeah.
Just tell me that.
Actually, it's a great story. I think that this story is it's kind of a more extreme story, but it represents so often what we do, or what we're prone to do. So this was a church in San Diego who pastor and his wife really wanted to get involved, like have civic involvement in kind of as a part of their missional vision, which is great. And this is kind of the point, is that it was an attempt for them to get involved, not just on an outreach level or ministry level, but how can we really be a part of a neighborhood civic organizing group. So they joined. They actually got voted in as a prominent role on the board.
So this is like a neighborhood center?
It's a neighborhood community development corporation.
Yeah.
Interestingly, it wasn't necessarily the neighborhood. Well, first of all, they didn't live in the neighborhood. Their church building was on the outskirts of the neighborhood.
That's mistake number one.
Yes. Right? So a building, which is a stakeholder in the neighborhood. So the church building is there, but they live enough outside of the neighborhood that they really didn't understand the culture of the neighborhood.
Yeah.
The CDC was made up of neighbors, local residents, and they were the only outside presence, even though their building had a space. So one of the things they did is they took on the role, very passionately, to help plan and organize the neighborhood's annual festival.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, for the couple years before this festival had been gaining a lot of traction, had become a really incredible neighborhood expression. So this couple took it on. They took on the budget. They planned it. They gave hours and hours to preparing for this. They ended up giving their church the prominent space on the stage. So where there were bands and other activities going on, their church had the prominent space. And they basically, from the stage, their band played. It became kind of an evangelistic sort of, not necessarily outright, but it was very clear that this was a church-run, activity. So from that moment, there was a lot of stir in the neighborhood. Actually, the neighborhood website, kind of a chat board. All these frustrated comments, particularly around like who were these people trying to proselytize? They clearly don't know our neighborhood. It was just a starkly not misaligned expression of this neighborhood. They confronted the couple. The rest of the board confronted the couple after the event, saying, "Hey, that wasn't cool what you did," and the couple actually denied. They felt like it was a success, and to them personally, they felt like it was an evangelistic success for them. Yeah. They were able to put on the festival. They had the budget for it. They gave a good message of love. Meanwhile, it was just a very, very disconnected expression of a way in which a church can engage a neighborhood.
Right. And it led to broken relationships too, right? So it's not just, it wasn't a neutral outcome like, oh, we didn't like what you did on the stage. No. It led to
it tainted the community development corporation, where people no longer trusted it. Like, what are you going to do? Like, we don't know what you guys are going to put on. This isn't us. On multiple levels, it caused so much friction. Yeah. And then it even people quit the board. So it became and it was out of this intent that they wanted to use this platform to express their love.
Their intent was good, and I mean they obviously have great organisational skill, and they brought their skill to bear and all.
Right,
it's almost great. It's almost like
great.
Good on you. Like you moved into this setting, you contributed, you were part of a community event. So almost right, except they couldn't release their agenda, could they?
Right.
They had to shoehorn their agenda into this neighborhood event.
And honestly, it was slight enough. It's like, why is it not enough for us to do something good? Like put on a good festival, do good music, and not have to then add our church logo or our church name or get the credit, invite people to our church. No, like that's the moment where relationship was broken.
I think we're used to stories where people will say, oh, this church had nothing to do with its neighbourhood.
Good
or
point.
this story,
Yeah.
everyone lived outside the neighbourhood. And we hear those stories and we think, oh, that's obviously not good. So that's bad. But it can almost be just as bad or even worse when we do enter into the neighbourhood.
Yeah, good
we
point.
do partner at this kind of level, organisationally, in terms of kind of cultural events and the like, and try and take over and try and like force it into what we want it to do, to kind of preach or to communicate the gospel or whatever the case may be.
Good.
Whereas like taking the long-term view, like being prepared to be an actual neighbour, contribute with grace and love, and make a contribution to the shape and the tone of these kinds of events without having to like brand them this kind of Christian evangelistic event. I suspect that actually those kinds of things are just as bad as if we'd never got involved in the first place, because they leave such a nasty taste in the mouth of the community. So, well, I was interested when you said not only do they may mistrust like this couple and their church, but now they don't actually trust the CDC
Great point.
committee. It's
Great
like,
point.
you know, if you're going to bring this
Yep.
in, how can we, our own neighbours, how can we trust? So you don't want the gospel people to be the ones that are creating sort of division and friction for no good reason.
And I mean, I think the shift of mentality is to saying that God is altering our places. God is already at work. God already has dreams. God already has ideas, and they're often not they're not often coming from us. In fact, I think that we miss it when we forget that our neighbors are the ones who are also having these kind of divine ideas and senses. They're wanting to participate. God's already wooing them into this participation in what it means to see the new creation come to being in our place. So how do we join that? How do we eliminate the us and them and begin to truly work together and become and hold true to our sense of what it means to be Jesus follower while we're collaborating and working alongside our neighbors for the common good?
Right.
So that's been, I mean, that's been the most probably continued inspiration for me in my own life and practice and faith, is to recognize that I actually don't have the answers. Even my greatest answers are so pale in comparison to all the things that God already has planned.
Sure. And the other thing to note too, in altering the world, it's not just growing faith communities or missional communities or even events, or even just neighbourhood development and community development. All of those things are good. But there are people who work in our neighbourhood. There are business people, there are school teachers, there are doctors, there are dentists. There are people all throughout our neighbourhood who are bringing something to their neighbours. And one of the other questions would be to ask, well, what does it look like for the church to actually, empower and help shape the Christian business people and doctors and dentists to see their work as contributing to the greater good, but also B, picking up on what you mentioned just a second ago, to help people collaborate with each other. I mean, there are peace seekers in our neighbourhood, there are healers in our neighbourhood, there are business people who are serving our neighbourhood. There's all sorts of kingdom-ish sort of stuff going on in our neighbourhoods. But we can't just imagine, unless it happens in a church context or it's a community development project of some kind, then that's the way God works. But God's at work birthing this new world all over the place. And the thing that I hear over and over again is that so many people say, oh, no, I don't draw any kind of encouragement or support from my church in that aspect of my life. I'm trying to be the best teacher that I can, not just like a good teacher to get a promotion. Like, I want to teach, I want to bring ideas, and I want to see students grow and be transformed, or I want to heal. I became a doctor, and I did that because I wanted to actually change people's lives. I became a fireman because I want to help people, or I became a local store attendant because I want to serve people. You just think, wow, that's all the stuff of the reign of God, isn't it?
So
Healing, peacemaking, serving, eating, hospitality. So how does the church actually kind of get into that to actually contribute to all those aspects of a neighbourhood? It's way more than just joining a committee or putting on an event and getting the evangelistic preacher to do their stuff.
So true.